There we go.
Good evening, everybody. I will now call to order the special council meeting of the Township of Cavan-Monaghan on this Monday, November 30th. I'd ask for approval of the agenda. Moved by Deputy Mayor Graham, seconded by Councillor Huntley. Madam, all in favor? Carried. And ask that any members declare any pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof at this time or when the situation arises. Seeing none, there is no closed session, so we will move right into Report Planning 2020-43, Bill 226, Proposed Changes to the Conservation Authorities Act and Planning Act Schedule 6. Mr. Conley, over to you.
Through your worship to council, I have before you Planning Report 2020-43, Bill 226, Proposed Changes to the Conservation Authority Act and Planning Act. Recommendations are that Report Planning 2020-43 be submitted to the province as the township's written submission to the Standing Committee on Finance and Economic Affairs through the Legislative Assembly of Ontario website, with specific recommendations that proposed legislation and regulatory require amendments. I identify that if a non-mandatory program or services for provincial purposes should be funded by the provincial government and not become the responsibility of the Conservation Authority municipal funding partners. I outline legislated/regulated responses times and service standards for all conservation authorities if they are providing planning and or technical services that are being contracted out as part of a memorandum of understanding MOU. 3, require CAs to incorporate the Conservation Ontario endorsed client service standards for Conservation Authority plan and permit review. 4, require CAs to identify the role and legislative authority under which they are providing comments to municipalities or planning approval authorities, and specifically whether these comments are advisory in nature. 5, require CA staff involvement in planning applications, i.e. subdivision applications, to be brought back before their respective board every 120 days for an update. 6, required CA files annual reports with specific references to the guidelines and performance monitoring policies set out in the policies and procedures for Conservation Authority plan review and permitting activities. 7, require permitting and activity performance reports to be brought before Conservation Authority boards in open session on a regular basis. 8, require that comments from CAs during a pre-consultation contain a list of the necessary studies that will be required based on the application submitted, limiting supplementary studies to those that are a result of findings from initial studies. And 9, create an independent permit appeal process. Under the current system, appeal goes back to the CA Authority Board and or Executive Committee, who are too close to remain independent. And then secondly, that a copy of this report be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Environment, Conservation of Parks, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, appropriate local MPPs, Autonomy Region Conservation Authority, Kawartha Conservation, Ganaraska Conservation Authority, Conservation Ontario, Peterborough County, and area municipalities.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Conley. Before we proceed on to questions, comments from members of council, I just want to personally thank you for the amount of time and effort you've taken to put into this report. There was a lot of information to go through. And I know besides reviewing the proposed legislation of Schedule 6, you've also spent a considerable amount of time investigating what other regions, boards, and conservation authorities have delved into as far as this specific issue. So big thank you, Mr. Conley, for taking the time. This is outside of a regular council meeting, hence why it's a special council meeting this evening specifically for this purpose. So thank you very much. So with that, I will open it up to my fellow councillors for any questions, comments for Mr. Conley. I apologize, I don't have everybody on the same screen. Deputy Mayor Graham, I don't, yeah, okay, there we go. All right, I've got all 4 councillors. Any questions, comments for Mr. Conley? The report before us. Councillor Huntley.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Conley. A question, we have, what, nine recommendations up on here? How do they correspond to the ones that are being proposed in the current bill?
With respect, Schedule 6 in the Bill 229 has a significant number of pages of a number of different clauses, quite extensive in terms of the number of clauses and what they're looking for. Rather than going into a deep dive of all of the parameters under Schedule 6, what I felt was that it would probably be good to highlight one from those changes. These are things that we have over the past
Uh-oh.
Asked while through our consultations comments. The review for the conservation authorities has happened over the last year and a half to almost 2 years. And so what I've been trying to do is take from comments we have put before it in terms of council reports, take a look at Schedule 6 as part of the proposed bill, and then highlight those which have been things that we have identified either in previous comments, reports from council, or also capture the highlights of what's in Schedule 6. It wasn't exhaustive. I felt that given the time, there are some things that probably as a staff member I would recommend approval of some of the things in Schedule 6, some things maybe not so much, but as opposed to doing a deep dive, I think maybe it's the kind of thing that perhaps council or staff would generally support most of the things in there, but these were the things that we felt we needed to highlight from a staff perspective for council.
Very good. Madam Clerk, could you take down the report so I can see all of council during the discussion? Excellent. Very good. Perfect. Okay. Further questions? I know specifically I wanted to speak to the accountability, which was a big point of the Schedule 6. We've certainly experienced that issue specifically with regards to conservation authorities and how matters have been dealt with. And I know we've struggled at times with having even our board rep getting responsive answers back relative to permit and the applications that have gone before them. So I think I'm very supportive of what we've got before us and the opportunity that basically that accountability is going to be put in place by the minister's office if we are not getting the appropriate response back from our local conservation authority. So I'm very supportive of the recommendations that are before us, and wish to send these on to the province. Councillor Huntley?
Through you, Chair, again. I guess my question, Mr. Connolly, is around the escalation process in the Section 6 and the timing associated with it, because there seems to be two paths for an applicant. But I think where I've struggled on this one is, when does that clock start ticking? Like, is it when a permit is being applied for, or is it when the actual consultation is starting to take place? And I'm kind of asking the question around, I know the lead times for these permits don't seem to be that bad. From what I've seen from the conservation authority that I sit on, they seem to be achieving those numbers. But I think the question comes from before that clock starts ticking on a permit, is that when the process of moving up to, asking for a minister to review and taking it to LPATs and things like that? Like, I don't understand the time frame. Maybe you can help elaborate on that one.
Of course. So through you, Chair, to Councillor Huntley, actually there's quite wide sweeping broad in Section 28 under Schedule 6, so under the bill. It actually allows for, as far as timing goes, there are a number of things in which the minister can step in and actually issue decisions in place of a conservation authority. So it effectively allows the minister to be able to step into the shoes of a conservation authority and all those responsibilities, plus also have added ability to be able to make decisions, either render decisions or amend decisions or change the conditions of such. I'm not a lawyer, but in looking through some of the legal wording here, I'm of the opinion that in Section 28 of the bill, it actually allows the minister not just to wait for a review, so some of it is applicant driven, but it actually allows the minister to be able to look at a file before the conservation authority has even issued or deliberated made a decision on Section 28 permit, not Section 28 of this legislation, but Section 28 under the Conservation Authorities Act in terms of their regulatory ability to make a decision. So I believe what it does is give significant power to the minister to be able to come in before an application's even been dealt with and be able to do that. There are specific timelines around when that decision can happen. There's 120 days and 90 days. And really the only time that really falls on the minister in his ability to be able to act for the CA is only being able to appeal that to LPAT if he or she hasn't made a decision within 90 days. So the timing seems to be quite encompassing in terms of the ability for the minister in this situation, even before an application has had a deliberation or a decision. It still allows for those opportunities, certainly after that's happened. But from my reading, even before that decision's been made by the Conservation Authority. And timing is one of those considerations in terms of the basis for the minister to be able to step in.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Huntley? And I think with specific reference, the concern is in a particular situation where the permit comes at a later stage, the Section 28 permit, which follows the subdivision application. The concern is with a subdivision application being held up prior to even an application being made for a permit under the auspices that a permit will not be granted at a later stage. That's the biggest concern. And I know when we spoke directly with Minister Yurk in conversations with regards to the consultation, we made that abundantly clear that we can't allow the planning process to be hijacked by a conservation authority denying a permit at a later stage of which a permit hasn't even been applied for. And that's what's fundamentally been causing a problem. And my reading of that section 28.1.1 section 3 is I share the same opinion with regards to that enables the minister to step in prior to an application for a section 28 permit even being applied for. So I think that covers it off well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it provides us as a municipality the assurance that there's going to be accountability at the CA level, because even our directors were having issues with trying to get information out of the Conservation Authority in a timely manner on a process that was eclipsing 2 years. So I'm very pleased with regards to the recommendations that we've got before us today. My only suggestion to council would be in light of the report and in light of the process that Mr. Conley's outlined for us that's going to be taken in the next few days at Queen's Park, is that we simply submit our recommendations as opposed to the recommendations and the entirety of the report. So my suggestion would be that we receive the report and that we approve the recommendations numbers 1 through 9, and that the last recommendation be changed and that a copy of these recommendations be forwarded to the Premier of Ontario, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Minister of Natural Resources and Forestry, appropriate local MPPs, Autonomy Region Conservation Authority, Kawartha Conservation, Ganaraska Conservation Authority, and Conservation Ontario, Peterborough County and area municipalities. That would be my suggestion to council. If councillors are in agreement. Any other questions, concerns? Suggested motions on the floor. If I got a mover, Councillor Huntley, a question. That looked like a question hand as opposed to a mover hand. Go ahead.
It was a bit of a mover hand, or it was a bit of a question hand. Sorry. My question through you, Chair, to Mr. Connolly is back to my first question about how many of these recommendations correlate with the ones that are already in the draft bill. Is in your experience, is at this point, is the House looking for recommendations on the ones already tabled, or do you think there is room for the pieces that we are suggesting to get slipped into that bill as well?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Huntley. In my experience down at Queen's Park, right now there are hearings set for the next 3 days. So today actually finished, and then Tuesday and Wednesday. If there isn't someone making a submission to make a presentation in person, comments are being received through an email. We have taken a number of opportunities, not only through reports we provided in consultation through the Environmental Registry, we also participated in terms of consultation. I think probably in my experience, the best thing would be to highlight. We could certainly attach the report, but I think what would be the greatest impact in terms of being read on top of all the other motions that are going forward, all the other submissions that are going forward, is to highlight the recommendations that are there. What I understand from monitoring other jurisdictions, other municipalities, conservation authorities, others making submissions, certainly Conservation Ontario and a number of conservation authorities themselves have been bringing this forward. They've been asking just to repeal all of Schedule 6, and that has got a lot of traction, certainly in areas like Durham, its member municipalities. Other jurisdictions, there have been a lot of municipalities that their resolution is to remove or revoke Schedule 6 in its entirety altogether, which effectively would be like starting all over again and resetting. a lot of the things that we've touched on, certainly in the recommendations, highlight that if there is wording to the effect that council generally supports Schedule 6 and then highlights these 9 recommendations on top of that, I believe that will have an impact and will also be part of the consideration of the public record as the government goes forward.
Et cetera, et cetera. There he's back. Lost you briefly there, Mr. Conley. You were gone for a second. I filled in the extra word.
My apologies. My apologies. The short answer is I think this is the best approach because I think it highlights those concerns and stands in contrast to jurisdictions that are actually seeking to revoke all of Schedule 6 in its entirety.
Okay.
Very good. Suggested recommendation for, or suggested motion for modified recommendations. Mover. Deputy Mayor Graham. Seconder. Councillor Moore. Any further discussion? Councillor Belch. Oh, Councillor Belch is frozen.
Just that I support. No, I'm not. I'm in favor of basically sending the province our feeling that Schedule 6 should stay intact. And we're in favor of it.
Councillor Belch, you're breaking up, but from that, I get that you're in support of
anybody's,
Schedule 6
hearing me.
and you're in favor of it, and we should let the province know that.
Yeah,
Okay. Very good.
absolutely.
So,
Councillor Huntley.
so one last discussion for Mr. Conley, hopefully. Anyway, I just to clarify the point, like even when a minister steps in to permit a permit or what have you, they still have to follow the Conservation Authority Act, do they not? Like they don't get to just arbitrarily, approve a permit without taking into consideration, all the pieces of the puzzle. Is that a true statement, or do they have carte blanche jurisdiction to sign a permit for whatever they feel like?
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Huntley, it would be my experience that this legislation would allow the minister to act as the Conservation Authority in that capacity. But any minister has the ability to look at the other legislation that they're bound by, including other things, provincial plans like the growth plan, provincial policy statement, other things. So from that standpoint, they can make a decision relative to specific Conservation Authority powers, but also that would be done in the light of looking at all the other provincial interests. And that would be other legislation, provincial plans, things of that nature.
Thank you for clarifying.
Very good. Madam Clerk, do you want a recorded vote or just
A recorded vote, please.
okay, recorded vote?
Deputy Mayor Graham,
Yes.
Councillor Belch,
Yes.
Councillor Huntley,
Yes.
Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore.
She's still with us?
I am. I was muted. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you. And Mayor McFadden.
Yes, motion is approved unanimously. Excellent. Mr. Conley, once again, thank you very much. That was a lot of work in the last few days to get that report done in preparation of a special meeting tonight. So thank you very much. With that, I'm going back to the agenda. I'd need we've got a confirming bylaw being bylaw number 2020-68 being a bylaw to confirm the special meeting held November 30th, 2020. Be read a first, second time, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the corporate seal attached thereto. Moved by Councillor Belch, second by Deputy Mayor Graham. All in favor? Carried. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Moore and Councillor Huntley, all in favor? Carried.